this morning. We turn to the economy now, and the May inflation report was just released, and it shows over year inflation hit a 3-year high, 4.2% last month. The report found that rising energy costs and gas prices contributed to pain for consumers. Underlying price pressures were more moderate, with core inflation, which excludes food and energy, increasing 0.2% in May and 2.9% from a year ago. So, Mayor de Blasio, I mean, this is what so many Americans have been saying in polls for a while, that they feel like the economy is not going well for them, going well just for the rich, and the prices are simply too high, and even more than the war, although obviously that's a contributing factor when it comes to energy prices, that is what strategists in both parties think that the election will be fought upon in November.
Yeah, it will be. And what we're seeing is inflation and the war have sort of become one thing. I mean, you've seen gas prices almost double in some parts of this country in the course of weeks, literally. This was the fastest increase in gas prices we've seen since the 1970s oil crisis. So that has a massive impact on the everyday American who was suffering from inflation already and struggling to make ends meet. I think this is, for Trump and for the Republicans, it's now baked in terms of what's going to happen with the midterms, especially because he can't get out of Iran. He cannot find a way out of his own jam. It's like the classic ad, he's fallen down, he can't get up. And so I think what that means is if the Iran war lingers, the gas prices remain high, Republicans just don't have an answer.
And that's just it, Rev. Even after the war does end, whenever that might be, it's going to take months for these prices to sort of settle, likely well past November.
Well, not only when it ends, but how it ends, because he either is going to have to withdraw and admit that they made a mistake, an error in judgment from the beginning, because he thought he could go in and the Iranians would bow, and they have not. Or he's going to have to go in with an all-out assault, which he said he wasn't going to do, and that could cost lives. Neither one of those will lead toward the opening of the Strait of Hormuz and will affect the gas prices and the affordability issue here in the United States. So there's no, either way, whichever door you choose, door one or door two, you're not going to win the prize. There's nothing behind either door but political liability for the Republicans in the midterm.
And as far as those midterms come, there seem to be a couple of givens. One, exactly this. It's going to be the economy might be topic number one. And number two, I think it's a given that if it doesn't go Republicans' way, there's going to be some questioning the results, the validity, the integrity of those elections. We saw the last couple of days, whether it's President Trump, we just played sound from Speaker Johnson a few minutes ago, suggesting that something was afoot in terms of the Los Angeles mayor's race. Now that Spencer Pratt, the Republican candidate, did not end up qualifying for the top two because mail-in votes switched that result. But Senate Majority Leader John Thune took a different tack. He pushed back on claims of voter fraud in California that have been spread by Trump and some of his allies. Thune did criticize the state's methods of counting votes, though, in an interview he gave yesterday with CNBC.
Frankly, you have to prove if there was cheating. And clearly that's something that you would have to do in California or anywhere else for that matter. But the fact that it takes days, literally days, to be able to count votes in a state like California, when there are other states around the country who do that very quickly and get an outcome and a result, it's incompetence, if nothing else. And, whether or not there was actual rigging is something that have to be proven. But clearly, this is a system in California that doesn't work and doesn't inspire confidence and trust in voters by the voters.
Mayor, Republicans and Democrats alike think California takes too long to count their votes. Yes. Fine. But I guess it's refreshing from Senator Thune there to actually say, hey, you've got to prove it. You actually have to provide evidence for these claims of election fraud, of something being rigged. Trump and most of his team don't think that's an important step. And I think we're seeing here the preview of a playbook that we're going to get in November. If Republicans lose the House, let's say, maybe the Senate too, you're going to hear them refuse to accept the results. And that puts us back, our democracy, back in a dangerous place.
It does. Jonathan, I remember 10 days after the 2016 election, I met with Trump at Trump Tower, trying to see if we could in any way work together. And a big part of that conversation was him telling me that millions of votes had been stolen, millions of undocumented people had voted, all sorts of fantasies. It's been a decade since I had that conversation, and he can not stop saying this, and the American people don't buy it. There's never been evidence. So I think this fits with the White House ballroom, and it fits with so many other things where Trump's talking about Trump's talking about his own view of the world that doesn't conform with what everyday Americans are experiencing. Everyday Americans are hurting. They want to hear Trump do something about inflation, cost of living. They're not getting it. So I think Thune is trying to save the Republicans from themselves, because this is a loser. Voter fraud that doesn't exist is a loser of an issue for the Republicans.
Yeah, poll after poll suggests the voters just don't buy it. And Peter Baker, it is yet another, and look, we don't want to go overboard here in praising Republican courage and ability to stand up to President Trump, but we have seen in the last couple of weeks, particularly in the Senate, a few moments of independence where the GOP leaders there in the upper chamber and some rank and file senators in the upper chamber are willing to tell the president no.
Yeah, including Senator Thune, who said publicly that he thought this $1.8 billion fund that would go steer taxpayer dollars to Trump's allies was not a good idea. He made clear that that was something that the senators were not going to accept. Now, at the same time, there are limits to that, right? They wouldn't write into law something barring that fund after the administration, after Todd Blanche, the acting attorney general, promised that it was no longer going to be implemented. But it was their revolt that caused Blanche to reverse course and say, no, we're not going to do this. Obviously, the Senate Republicans have also taken issue with the ballroom funding that the president wanted, $1 billion for a ballroom he said was actually going to be paid for entirely by private private donors. Wouldn't cost the taxpayers a dime. Senator Republicans said, no, that's not something we're interested in. And this appointment of Bill Pulte, a housing czar, a guy known for building cookie-cutter townhouses, as the director of national intelligence, has gotten a lot of Republicans upset on the Senate side as well. And that's holding up the surveillance bill that was heading toward a bipartisan approval. So you're right to say that there is some consternation brewing among the Senate Republicans. How far they're willing to take it, not really clear, because we've seen that before, and then they get back in line. But at the moment, they're upset. And they're upset about other things, too. It's not helpful to them that John Cornyn was defeated in a primary because the president endorsed his opponent. Not helpful as far as they're concerned that Bill Cassidy from Louisiana lost in the primary because the president went after him. They're not happy about that.
Jonathan, on this surveillance bill that Peter's talking about, just really quick, the Democrats have an extraordinary opportunity here to really draw a line and say, we're not going to allow warrantless searches of Americans. We're going to protect privacy. And if they do that, because it's a 60-vote threshold in the Senate, the Democrats could actually say, we stopped Trump from weaponizing the tools of government, what he's done with the Justice Department, what he's done with the FBI. The Democrats have a chance here. They actually are holding the cards to stand in Trump's way in his march to authoritarianism. That's what the Democratic base wants. In fact, more and more, that's what the average American wants to see. They want their privacy protected. So this could be another watershed moment where Trump's vulnerabilities open the doors to Democrats taking a stand and winning on this issue.
Well, they have the cards. They have to use the cards.
Exactly.
Can't win a card game if you're afraid to throw your cards out.
Well, I think this is all about what's happening within the Democratic Party. People want to see the Democrats stand up to Trump. Here's a chance for them to do it.
The mayor wrote a piece in The Hill about this. And Peter Baker, you're right about the Republicans' refusal to ban the slush fund. Doing so in law, first of all, keeps the door open that the president could revisit it down the road. It also sparked the fury of Senator Tillis, who blasted his colleagues in a note earlier this week. Peter Baker, The New York Times, thank you as always.